just gonna tell you that Miss Davis is gonna hate us. We forgot to record.
I think I just started it. I think I started it. Let me know.
We're social workers. We don't do tech stuff.
It's a big ask.
So that's just to paint that picture of like, you know, a huge percentage of our population have mental health concerns. And that's like a diagnosable disorder. But if we're talking about people who are just burned out and stressed, I can't even imagine what that number would be in a population of 2,000. I mean, just being stressed out in general. I'll let you take this one, Kayla.
I think, yeah, this just is kind of reiterating what Ms. Gunter was talking about with our referrals. I would say, I don't know what you would say, but I would say like well over 50% are related to anxiety, whether it's anxiety around school, being around people, especially coming back to school in person. I think last year we had a lot of students who were just having a hard time sitting in a room with 30 people and having to socialize all at once again, especially after missing very core years of development that socialization is happening in middle school or in high school. So I would say more than 32% for us.
There was like this kind of misconception that everybody was happy to come back to in-person learning.
Or both, you know, like they could be happy and
absolutely
not ready for it, you know.
It was very stressful because remember when you were in a Zoom classroom, if you needed to turn off your camera, you could. It was a little bit more, you had a little bit more like barriers to hide behind, and then you come in person, and it was a tough year. I'll be honest, it was a really tough year last year. We anticipate a high number of referrals this year, but my hope is that things have settled a bit. But we'll talk a little bit more about like what to look for when we're talking about, you know, what might be going on with your kiddo.
And let me know if you think I should skip any of these slides. Again, this is kind of our big mental health picture.
This is just kind of like an assortment of like the mental health concerns that we see, you know, just talking about referrals that we see. Like Mx Marshall mentioned, we get a lot of anxiety referrals. That's a huge chunk of ours. But we also get things like depression, you know, burnout, relationship issues, communication issues with parents. Oh my gosh, what else are we seeing?
So much. And I also want to plug our calming space, mental health and wellness center that opened last year or reopened last year, because so much of it could be related to ongoing mental health issues that are coming up. But stress, you know, if there's a traumatic event or, you know, a loss of someone, those things that are kind of immediate and maybe not so much.
We've had a lot of students like lose family members to COVID, you know, so they're dealing with grief, but they're also dealing with having to be at school. And I think, you know, we did a presentation in the classrooms over the last couple of days. And one of the things that we really want to reiterate is like, life happens, right? Like, unfortunately, life is not perfect for everyone. If it were, it would be so much easier to like focus on our schoolwork. But if you have a family member pass away, if these teenagers had a breakup that was really meaningful to them, I mean, it's really difficult to get them to focus in school. So, you know, a lot of times we go straight to pushing like, do your homework, get all these things done. But we really have to pause and look at what's going on with our student. Because if they're not in a good headspace, if their mental health is, you know, maybe not the best that it could be, it's almost impossible for them to be completely successful in school, right? If that's not your priority and you have all these other things going on, unfortunately, it impacts our relationships. It impacts the way that we learn. If you're stressed out, your brain is in survival mode and you're not retaining information in the same way. So maybe you'll see students whose grades fall. So that's why we always say it's like, we have to focus on the mental health piece first before we're pushing all of the school stuff, because it just doesn't work. If they're not in that space yet and they're not really able to process information and memorize stuff because their thoughts are all over the place, it doesn't work. And so that's why we really wanted to share with you. And we appreciate the time that you've come to talk about like the reality of having teenagers. They have struggles, you know, and go ahead and Mx Marshall with like things that can impact our mental health. Oh no, I meant the last slide. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
Oh no, I feel as though we kind of covered this. I think so. Just kind of things that could really impact.
Yeah. So even like the first one here where it says like stress, busy schedules, and pressure to succeed. This one I just like want to really highlight because this is what we see the majority of. We have students who are trying so hard to fill their applications with all these wonderful things they've done in high school. But one of the things that I always tell people is like, if you're really putting a lot of energy into something, something has to give with the other things you do. And what I mean by that is like, if I'm being the best social worker I can be, and I'm, totally like sending emails at night and working hard at night so that I can come into work and be like the best social worker on campus, what's happening to my life at home, right? I'm probably ignoring my family, not exercising, not taking care of myself because I'm so hyper focused on being the best social worker I can be. And so when we talk about mental health, I like to think of it as like this holistic approach. So like there's so many components to us, right? There's our kids' family, their friends, their schedules, their future colleges, their health, their mental health. And the idea is we want to balance all those. But what we notice is a lot of times they put most of their energy and effort into school stuff. So then everything else starts to give, everything else starts to break down. And that's when we start to see, referrals coming in about students not being okay. And so we are super pro school, we are pro doing well in school, but we also acknowledge that sometimes if kids are overbooked, I have students who are working and taking 4 AP classes and presidents of clubs and all these things. And those are usually the students that, although on the outside they look like they're really thriving, are really struggling on the inside with their mental health. Mm-hmm. So just other factors that could impact relationships. A lot of times we minimize what teenage relationships are. They're pretty meaningful. And I always tell students, and maybe I shouldn't tell them this, but like I met my husband in high school, right? And so that was a meaningful relationship for me. And I remember my mom telling me like, you don't know what love is. You're too young to know this stuff. Stop stressing about it. Stop worrying about it. And the reality is all these things are issues that they are going to worry about. As much as I've told my kids, like, don't worry about these things and that thing, it's like they all have to go through the process on their own. We all have to make mistakes and do that. And so I think all of these things are part of that. Our kids lack coping skills. And that's one of the big things that Mx Marshall and I really want to focus on this year is teaching kids how to cope with stress. We don't want them to avoid stress because stress is inevitable, but we really want to teach them and give them the skills of how to survive when things are not okay. Mm-hmm.
These are just some signs and symptoms that might be coming up for you with your child at home, that we might see or teachers might see in the classroom, or even just their friends that we were talking about. But if kids are having just a lack of joy, maybe they're not doing the things that they like to do usually. And it's hard, I think, it's hard to balance these signs and symptoms with just being a teenager, the transition into like finding new interests or not being interested in things that they were, years before. But if you're finding that they are not doing the things they don't go on walks, they don't talk to their friends, having low energy, again, like these kind of things, they go hand in hand with being a teenager, right? They're probably sleeping more. They don't want to do family events, whatever it is. Sleeping too much or too little. I don't know if y'all can relate to trying to navigate, like, is this a normal thing for my child or should I be concerned? And you kind of are always monitoring it. But things, as we kind of go down this list, the kind of severe change in diet and exercise, especially things like self-harm, if you're noticing them thinking about hurting themselves or not wanting to be here anymore, I think it's pretty rare that kids will just come to you saying like, hey, I'm thinking about suicide, just wanted to let you know, right? Sometimes it just looks more like sleeping more, or sometimes they'll even make comments like, I'm just done, I'm tired, I don't want to be here anymore. Things that can be a little bit more vague. So I think we're always trying to balance these behavioral signs and symptoms with just kind of normal growing up, normal hormonal changes, being a teenager. But that's where we come in and reaching out to us when you have questions about this. I think we talk to a lot of parents who are noticing their kids sleeping more or notice that their friend groups are changing. Maybe it's something that they're kind of worried about. And it just helps for us to have extra eyes at home, for you to have extra eyes here at school.
Yeah, don't ever hesitate to reach out if you just have any questions about that. Like, hey, I noticed this was happening with my son, or, don't ever hesitate, because I think, consulting is super important, because, I don't consider myself an expert in parenting. I don't think anybody is. This is like all trial and error, right? And so when we have people who like specialize in things like mental health, like utilize that resource to your advantage, right? We just want to know what's going on with our kids, and sometimes it's normal, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's normal to be tired after a long day, but if you notice your kid sleeping 12 hours and they're still exhausted in the morning, I mean, that would definitely be something to be concerned about. We always encourage people to check in with their general doctors, but when it comes to like mental health things, if you have any questions at all, that's what we're here for. We're here for your students, we're here for you, however we can best support.
And if we are not the experts in it, we know people who are. I'm looking at this last bullet point of hearing or seeing things that like other people might not. So if someone is, you notice that they're talking to someone, they're hearing things, or they're even just telling you what they're experiencing, it's not something shameful. It's just something that we have resources for. Maybe it's not my expertise or Ms. Gunter's expertise, but there's a lot of supportive resources in the community. And Mr. Rosales also has a wealth of knowledge as well. Can I move?
Yep, go for it.
Okay. I think I highlighted this kind of on the last slide, but this is something also I think I've seen get to be a lot more common the past couple of years with students, whether it's just suicidal thoughts. That could be anything ranging from they have one thought once, just wanting to die, not wanting to be there, to seriously thinking about it pretty often, maybe having a plan to do this. So when we talk about suicidal ideation, it's a pretty broad spectrum, but we want to take all of it seriously, right? Because we don't know, we don't want to take that chance with.
And I think sometimes when we talk about like suicide and teenagers, for me, I'm going to be completely honest. For me, I would kind of check out, like, that's not my kid, right? I would just kind of check out of like, oh, that's really must be really tough. Or I would even call parents and be like, hey, I talked to your son or daughter and they're thinking about suicide. And it was kind of like this, like, that's just what I do. And that's part of my job. And it wasn't until I had that experience with my own kids. I think at one point or another, every one of my kids have said that. I tell my 19-year-old that I share this, but he graduated in 2021. So it was like right in the height of quarantine. And what I had noticed that year is he had just stopped communicating with friends. He wasn't really turning in homework. He had been like a really good student all along. And I would check in with him and I'm like, how are you? I'm kind of worried about you. And he would tell me, fine, fine, fine. Well, move forward a year later, he confided in me. He's like, man, that was a really tough year. He's like, there were so many nights where, I would call my friend and tell him like, I don't know how much longer I could do this. I was so suicidal. And I'm like, wait, what? Like, it shocked me. I was like, I didn't know. And so I feel like that was like one thing as a parent to not know, but to be an expert in the field of mental health and have my kid under my own roof struggling with suicidality and major depression, and me not even knowing, like, really gave me this wake up call of like, I completely acknowledge that it's so easy to just kind of check out of this part. That's not my kid. My kid would never do that. We've had, unfortunately, several completed suicides in our district over the last year. We've had students already this year attempt suicide. It's real, it happens, and that's why we talk about it. It's uncomfortable, it's scary, it's something that as a parent, I don't want to talk about, I don't want to think about, I don't even want to acknowledge, but I know now from my own experience that if I don't, that doesn't stop it from happening. It is scary. I just want to like name that it's frightening when we think about things with our kids of like, oh my gosh, we're here to talk about school and do all these things, but that's why we go back to like, without keeping up and keeping our mental health in a good place, things happen. And so this is just like to be aware, that it doesn't mean that you're a failure as a parent. It doesn't mean that your kids are not well. It is just the reality of being a teenager. Their brains are not completely developed. The long-term consequences aren't totally there in their brain. And so sometimes when kids are, under a lot of pressure or going through depression or get humiliated online, this is sometimes their go-to thought of like, I don't want to be here anymore. And so if you ever feel like that's something for you, then you know that's happening, reach out to us, reach out to a professional always.
Oops, sorry, I'm in the chat. Okay. I like the hop, skip,
Another hard topic. It's hard topic, everybody.
I know, it's like right from suicidal thoughts to sexual harassment. Sometimes I think me and Yvonne talk about kind of being a little desensitized to these topics.
No,
So
totally.
apologies in advance. And I also want to check in if y'all are available to put in the chat. Is it helpful to have the slides up, or, you know, I realize that maybe most of you might be listening and just listening to us, because I think in the future, like, we might tailor this differently if most people are just listening. So just wanted to ask that before we moved on. But yeah, just as a general, this is maybe better information for students. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's important that as parents, we're talking about sexual health. We're talking about things like consent. We're talking about, you know, what proper behavior is in regards to like how we interact with others. I think it's something that should be a normal conversation at home and at school. Like, I think it's something that we talk about. I know that a lot of times it can be, you know, I don't want to discuss this with my kiddo because they're not really there yet, but I always err on the side of caution. I want them to have the information of like how to keep themselves safe, how to keep others safe. And so this probably slide is more for kids, but just know that like that's something that if you had questions about or issues come up surrounding, you know, sexual health or harassment or anything that could go wrong or right, like let us know, talk to us about it. It is uncomfortable. I'm 44 years old now, and I don't want to talk to my parents about sex. I have 3 children. I don't want to do that. And so I acknowledge that for teenagers, that's very similar. So we can go on to the next slide.
Okay.
This is another one about consent. So then a little bit about stigma. One of the things that I really want to acknowledge is when we talk about mental health, it can be like, it's not something that I still to this day feel comfortable talking about it. You know, Mx Marshall and I talk about like, why do we do what we do? Why am I in this profession? And for me, you know, I'll just share briefly that, you know, in high school, I was a really good student. I was a really good athlete. Things were going really well. Things were great. I was planning on going to college. I was planning on playing sports in college. And coming up to graduation, I started experiencing horrible, horrible anxiety, panic attacks out of nowhere, just started. And at that time, I didn't know what it was. So I thought there was something severely wrong with me. And it really changed my life for the worse at that point. I didn't, you know, graduate on time, even though I had done so well. I didn't work. I didn't really thrive in life because my anxiety was so bad. And I remember my parents being like, oh my gosh, it's like all in your head, like you're going to be okay, like what's going on? And I didn't know. And it's one of those things that like, if I had a regular medical condition, like, you know, I don't even want to name one. It's easy to talk about like, oh, I have this medical condition and whatever. But when we talk about mental health, there starts to be this level of like shame, you know, even now, like, I know that it's okay to talk about it. I know that it's okay that I struggled. You know, I know that it's okay that I got help for it, but there's still that little tinge of like, oh, I don't want to tell people that. They're going to think that there's something wrong with me, or they're going to think that I'm crazy. And so one of the things that I've made a promise to myself about is like really being honest and open about my own experience with anxiety, depression, suicidality, because if I'm honest, it opens up the lines of communication for people to be honest with me. And so when we talk about stigma, it's like so easy to talk about health conditions. If you have a health condition and that's it, you can talk about it and people don't even blink. But if you have a mental health related concern, we start to feel embarrassed or, you know, shameful. Or sometimes, you know, I've had people say like, tell their kids like, don't talk to anybody about this at school because we don't want them to think anything's wrong with you. Or they'll think like, if you get mental health concern, then you might not, if you have mental health concerns, like you're not going to be able to get a job later because they're going to know that there's something wrong with you. Not the case at all. And so when we talk about stigmas, it's about, you know, it definitely impacts teenagers in a negative way.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that we've been really successful at is normalizing and making it normal to ask for help, making it normal to go to the wellness center, making it normal to say, hey, I'm not okay and I'm struggling with stress and anxiety.
Mhm.
And so I'll let you take this one about just the effects of mental health stigmas and what that means.
I was going to add as well, I think something that's really common that we hear from our students is like that my parents think that it's something they're doing wrong, so I don't want to talk to them about it. So there's usually like a disconnect where kids think that parents don't want to talk about it. And then when me and Ms. Gunter end up talking to the parents, they are so open, they want to help, they want to support. And I think we want to like bridge it on the other side too, of just being really explicit with your kids of there's no judgment in this. That's not anyone's fault. It's not mine as a parent's fault. It's not your fault as a kid.
I mean, one of the first responses we get when we call home and say, hey, your kid's struggling with depression and they've had some suicidal thoughts. A lot of times the response I get is, I don't understand. We give her everything. She just has to do her homework. And so it's very personalized. And so just know, if your kid is struggling with their mental health, this is not a reflection of you, okay? And I think that's really important to know, is that it happens to a lot of people, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad parent or that you did something wrong or that there's something wrong in your DNA or anything like that. So just keep that in mind, as when we're talking about mental health, it is not a reflection of who you are, who your kid is, or what you've done right or wrong. So I just wanted to put that out there as a reminder.
Right. And that's on a one-on-one level, because I would say as a society, there's a lot of stigma as well. So I think on a one-on-one basis, we have to work really hard. And I think as a school, we're trying to work really hard to put it out there, because we have to correct so many just misunderstandings or misinformation about mental health. So it's not kind of a blank slate. We're already starting at a disadvantage, I would say. So just having more blunt, open conversations, leading with support is, I think this last bullet, I'm just assuming you guys are reading. I'm sorry if I don't read everything on the slide. But this last bullet, I think, stands out to me. It says most of this stigma, like, it just ends up leading to people not reaching out for support, people holding it together for themselves, holding it together for their family, for their friends, because they think that it's not going to be understood, or that they can't get help, that they don't realize what kind of help is out there for them.
One of the things I always ask of parents, and this was a really hard one to ask for myself, is, a lot of times, like when my kids were struggling, it was really hard for me to acknowledge that I was not the person that they wanted to talk to about it. And I'm like, well, I'm a therapist and I'm your mom and I know everything. And they didn't want to talk to me about it. And so that was something really hard for me to swallow. And so as a parent, sometimes, like, if your child does get a referral to see us, and we do seek permission to talk to them, just keep that in mind. Like, sometimes we're not the person, even though that might be hurtful, because we do everything for our kiddos. Just knowing that, like, part of that stigma is like letting them know that it's okay to get help from somebody else.
And talking about like what it looks like with the stigma, how it comes out in kind of day to day, I think sometimes, especially as I'm going through these presentations, or if I've ever been participating, I'm realizing, I can start off saying like, oh yeah, stigma is so bad. That's not me. And then realizing, like, when examples come up, I'm like, oh, I think I have maybe said that at one point, or maybe I've not intentionally, but realizing how often we share these sentiments. I think something that we hear often is that, like, therapy is not for me because I'm not sick. I'm not like sick in the head. I think that's a big expression out there, that you have to be really ill to need therapy or to need some kind of help or even medication. When in reality, it could just be something that just helps, it's a little bit of support. A lot of the times we also hear is just think positively, just keep your head up. You got this. I think right now it's being talked about as toxic positivity. Something that we're, again, well-meaning, well-intentioned, that stay positive. Maybe it's something that works for you to just see the silver lining, but for someone dealing with heavy mental health issues, to stay positive is not kind of part of the treatment plan, I would say.
It actually creates, a lot of times students will say, like, I don't want to tell my mom that I'm not feeling well or doing well, because then she's going to think or know that I'm ungrateful. I know she does so much for me and I'm still feeling like this, so I feel bad about it. So that's like another reason that, stigmas continues, because like kids don't want to make us feel bad. They don't want us to feel like, we did something wrong or we created this issue for them. So just like Mixed Martial, being honest is like, I've said some of these things to my own children, if you said something like that, throw it in the chat. I mean, this is a good space for parents to just be honest with one another. And I'm definitely by far not a perfect mom, and I've made a lot of these errors and just, learned along the way. And so, the things I say are coming from experience of not doing everything right all the time.
The last one on this page that I really want to highlight, because I think so many of the boys or masculine people on campus face, is like they're not supposed to cry. Like they're not supposed to feel sad. They're not supposed to take time, whether they hear that from their family, from their friends, from just kind of society as in general, that they're not allowed to have mental health issues at all. And I think what that ends up, I mean, we see it later on, is we see higher suicide rates for men. We see, a lot of, or completed suicide, I think there's always a discrepancy, but, it just has so many effects later on. And I don't know, I could talk about it forever, and I'm very passionate about it.
I'm going to address this question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat. It says, good morning. My question in regards to type of stress related to schoolwork, which we are all going to run across. The Canvas app for submitting classwork for one particular class showed assignments not submitted or submitted late, even though they were submitted on time. This is affecting the grades, which have been causing stress to the child. What are your thoughts on dealing with such matter? This is huge. One of the things that we always talk about is the fact that we as parents and students check Canvas as if we're checking the stock market multiple times a day. And a lot of days, things are getting updated. Miss Davis will be able to talk a little bit more about like teachers updating grade books and things like that, but how do we deal with it with our children when these things are creating stress? And I think it's kind of what you said, is like acknowledging that they are not always going to be up to date. So using that as a thermometer of like how you feel, like using Canvas as a thermometer of how your kid feels, is not going to be a good way to go. And just knowing that like it takes time to do things. And as long as you know that you're turning in things and doing things on time, like really helping your kiddo process, is like, it's okay. It's okay that we don't know right away. The unknown is stressful for us. I wish there was a better answer of like, yeah, let's get these grades updated quicker. But the reality is that it doesn't happen. I don't think that there's like I don't know. I can't address like how often grades are updated and things like that, but I can just speak to like knowing. I ask kids all the time, how many times do you check Canvas in one day? And I have students tell me 10 times. And I say, like, how many times are things different the second time you check them on the same day? And they said never. So I would say really like encouraging your students to maybe check it less frequently and normalizing that. Like, it's okay if we don't see changes every single day. Like, it's okay to only do it once a day. It's okay to only do it once every couple days, because when I, talk to students, they are always looking, they're always on Canvas. And, we have to think about things we can control versus things we can't control. And teachers updating their grade book is something that our kids can't control, right? Unfortunately, I wish they could. And so really having them focus on the things they can control, like turning in their work. I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't know if you have any thoughts about that one, Kayla. It's a hard one.
No, I don't. I don't have any more than you do. I see another one. Can we speak to teachers about making sure the student is really absent before marking them absent? They've been marked absent by mistake this week. Yeah, I think that's also kind of a common thing. And it's unfortunate because then you guys get a phone call, which adds to the whole stress and concern. It's something that if students know, they can just go check in with the attendance office, check in with the teacher, and it gets corrected later. But unfortunately, it does have you get that phone call.
I have a quick question for the parents, especially the ones that have been here a while. Do any parents check Canvas every single day? Honest question. Honest answers. No judgment. Or maybe you haven't signed in.
Yeah.
And when you do that every single day, or when you do check Canvas, what does the conversation look like with your student when you go on Canvas? Is it something you just do for yourself? Is it something where you're inquiring with your student what's going on? Like, tell us a little bit about what that looks like for you. Somebody says, I check to help to see what needs to be turned in. I check it only when there's an alert about late submissions. Okay.
You're also welcome to unmute if that's easier.
Yeah, I would love to hear from you. We talked a lot.
Yeah.
Or if anybody has any, like, that you check it and it's stressful for you, or you check it and it causes any tension between you and your child, like anything like that, we want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good, Jessica. Look, they don't. I wish they did. I don't know that I've ever checked Canvas and then had a positive interaction with my kid afterwards. I'm never like,
I love that. Yeah. That's so real. That is just like so honest and real.
No, totally. I'm like, why is this missing? My daughter has questions. I'm checking a lot of things to see if she's on track or doing things correctly. I notice that things don't change more than once a day or 2 or 3 days. Look for alerts and missing assignments. Yep.
Yeah.
I think the stress is more like, we hope the assignments don't get misplaced by the busy teacher. That's a legitimate fear. And it is good to be on top of things. One of the things I really try to do is encourage my own kids to have those conversations with the teachers first. My instinct is to go into mama bear mode and fix all their problems with their teachers. That's my instinct. That's what I do. And so I have to pull back and be like, okay, I need you to talk to your teacher, and I kind of manage that. But I realized that my 19-year-old, I kind of created this monster. I like babied him, and I was what we call a snowplow parent, where you work like a snowplow and you get all the snow and all the stress out of the way so they have this clear path. And then all of a sudden he was 18 years old, not ordering his own food at a restaurant, so trying to balance like pushing them to do the things that are hard. Mm-hmm. It's encouraging. When I talk to my daughter about it, she says everything's fine. So I'm giving her some space instead of being the Papa Bear parent. So hard, but good job.
Very stressed.
Yeah. I'm
gonna just move past a couple of these just because kind of not relevant, except I loved this one. Just research shown that having at least one caring adult in a child's life increases the chances of them growing up to becoming a productive, self-sufficient adult. And just whether that's you as a parent, whether that's having family friends, whether that's having grandparents, aunts, uncles, having school staff, and just having, really, it takes a village.
I'm kind of curious to hear who that was for everybody, or maybe you didn't have that. Like for Mix Marshall and Mr. Rosales, like who was that for you? Or was there someone like that for you? Who was your caring adult?
For me, it was my mom. I'm really grateful for her. I think my high school experience, I was getting in trouble a lot. I had a couple of suspensions, and like at home, I would always hear about it from her. I'd get in trouble, I'd get grounded, like I would not be on good terms with her. But when it came to defending me at school, if teachers were being a little more punitive than was necessary, she like always had my back. But I always I can grow up and appreciate the balance now of her, not letting me off the hook, but also, going to bat for me.
I love it.
That's always a tough one for me. I don't ever have who was the favorite teacher, who made the impact. I kind of had a lot of friends that were older, and from 5 to 10 years older, my exact age. I grew up with a lot of guys my age, so kind of almost had the big brother. So I wouldn't really necessarily say they were an adult, but I had a lot of older brother types who kind of kept me in line. So not to make the mistakes that they did or mistakes that they knew people did. So that's kind of weird for me. I kind of had more of a lot of older siblings without having siblings. I have one brother, but he would say probably the same answer.
Yeah. And I wonder too, if I think my child's support person is the same person that actually is their support person. How well do we know our kids? who would you all guess is the person that your kids find their caring adult? Is it you? Is it somebody else? I can't even think for me. I think I had all my aunts were super cool. I had like 5 aunts that lived really close by, and they were super supportive. And when I'd get in trouble and run away and go hang out at their house, that was probably for me. But I really take this to heart in my work. I really feel like every interaction I have with students on campus is potentially being that caring adult for them. I don't know what everybody's story is, but I always want to make sure that whatever interaction I have is something positive in the event that maybe I am that for somebody. I don't know if I'm not for anybody, but you know, my hope is that every interaction I have with students around campus, I can be that for.
Right. I see there's a lot of questions in chat. I think Rupert's kind of helping people out with the Canvas and
yeah. So the easiest way to do it is you want to sign into ARMS first. So Infinite Campus lives inside ARMS. If you don't have access to your ARMS account, email me and I will reset your account so you can get into ARMS. Once you reset your account into ARMS, you should be able to access Infinite Campus. If your student has Canvas, they have to be logged into Canvas first, and then there's a way for them to generate an observer. That's how you get the pairing code. I know it's a lot of things, but if you email me, I can email you both the student instructions on how to install Canvas, and then how to become an observer once your student has it. They kind of go hand in hand. You can't do one without the other. But ARMS and Infinite Campus, that's easy. Canvas is new to all of us, and they haven't necessarily trained us on what it does, how it works, everything like that. As far as the teachers, they were able to put their grade books in their assignments. But as far as getting you guys on board with that, it's a little trial and error right now.
We have a question about the campus's policy on vaping. As the student's looking for a safe bathroom that doesn't make him nauseous from the vaping. I'm so sorry. It's
sorry to hear that.
Something we're like constantly
I mean, it's definitely a no vaping, you know, and I think one of the things I'm really excited about this year is our safety team has expanded. And so we have people constantly monitoring the hallways and the bathrooms. Of course, like it will happen, but anytime if your kiddo is seeing something happening and they need to report things anonymously, I think the anonymous line is still open, but I would suggest that they talk to a teacher or an advisor.
There's usually someone posted outside the bathrooms.
There should be somebody in every hallway, like if they're seeing something like that, and they could do that anonymously, because I know some people don't want to be the person that tells on everybody else, but we do want them to have a bathroom where they feel safe and comfortable using it.
Right.
Yeah, if we see it, we take it. I'm one of the ones that are out there during supervision. We kind of know when they all go in, and it's a gray area because it is a restroom. We can't just necessarily go in and assume they're not doing anything besides using the restroom. But we do confiscate. They do have we are in partner with the TUBE program, actually the TUBE coordinator. So we do have them attend meetings. We do have the parents of those students attend meetings. Now they're going to be required to do a survey this year. So we do take it seriously. It's just something that's hard to do when it is in the restroom.
Rupert, tell us what TUPE is.
Tobacco use prevention education.
Tobacco use prevention education.
Yeah, and some say TUPE, some I say TUPE. There's a lot of different ways to say it. Is there a better bathroom to go to? We do have non-binary safe restrooms. Students can ask a staff member to open one, but we would use our discretion whether or not we would tell the student if they can use it. The health office is open Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. If they're truly just like uncomfortable, we do have other options.
Yeah, but definitely have them reach out to one of us or any adult on campus if there's something going on that's making them feel uncomfortable.
Just to answer is Canvas inside of ARMS? Everything is inside of ARMS. Anytime a staff member or student logs in, we log directly into ARMS. And then our Infinite Campus is there, Canvas is there, everything that we use for our day-to-day. So the same thing as for students and parents, just parents have limited apps within their arms. So yes, Canvas is there, but I've been instructing students to log into Canvas, downloading the app and using their arms credentials to log in that way. It's been easier. I haven't got many feedback from the parents. So if you know your student is using Canvas on their phone, try to see if you can download the same and use your arms credentials to log into that. Yes, they should all be the same, but you have to get the pairing code, like I said, from the student.
Yeah. And if all the stuff Mr. Rosales is talking about, you're like, I have no idea what's happening right now, don't feel bad. Mr. Rosales is a really good person. There's no dumb questions, because I'm probably going to go down there later and be like, how do I get into Canvas for my kid?
I also have several questions for you guys.
Yeah, the teachers are still using Infinite Campus. The only thing that we're no longer using is School Loop. So we used School Loop last year. Some teachers can still use Google Classroom, I believe, and Infinite Campus as their grade book, but we are hoping that the teachers start using Canvas solely. That is the idea, that their grade books, the assignments, everything should be on Canvas. But if not, they still might be using Google Classroom. And then you would have to get the Google Classroom code from the teacher themselves.
Yeah, we only have a few minutes left. If there's any last minute questions you want to let us know. We just really want you to know that there's so much support. Like I think Mix Marshall said earlier, it does take a village. And so whatever your questions are, let the school partner with you to support your kiddo. I do it. I use it all. I have a lot of people here on campus for my kids because it's not easy. I don't have all of the answers, but somebody usually does. So don't ever hesitate. I don't know if we can, I'll put my email in the chat one more time, just in case you missed it. I don't know how to do it.
I can do it if you want.
Okay, thanks.
If you go to the school website and you click on parents, my face and everything should show up. My number,
your face.
We all have a page, I believe, right? So yeah, if you go to mine and then if you ask me, I don't have Miss Marshall's or Miss Gunter's email, I can always give you that too.
Sounds good.
It should be there also.
Yes. So any last minute questions, thoughts, worries? Hopefully you're excited about this
Excitement.
Year. I'm excited. I'm always excited to be here though.
Yeah, I think the air around campus is everyone feels like it's a little different this year, a little bit more relaxed, and everyone's a little bit more grounded. So
I think just like the students, we were caught off guard over how overwhelming last year was going to be. I think so. I would say we're more well prepared.
Yeah,
see that?
I'm excited.
Awesome.
Because we're human too, right? We get anxiety just as the same.
Sure.
Right? Was that the moral of the story today, right?
Yeah. No stigma.
So I know I always feel like we're always the bearer of bad news, like the Debbie Downers of all this real life stuff. Honestly, most kids are thriving here. There's so many good experiences. I always make it a point to walk around campus because sometimes I forget that, just being in the line of work that I'm in. My kids wouldn't be here if I didn't feel that way, that it was a really great place to be. And like I said, I love that we have so much support in every different area. And so we just want you to feel safe coming to us and talking to anybody on campus if you need support, you or your child.
Right.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Right, y'all. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know what the topic is next week yet, so
yeah, TBD.
But hopefully we'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, I'm gonna stop recording.